Pragmata, the newest addition to the Capcom roster, just having this game out, a completely new IP with a completely different and innovative gameplay loop is a miracle by itself. But let's see if this is actually a good game or if it's more of a hype bomb. So, Pragmata is a science fiction third-person action-adventure Capcom game, directed by Cho Young-hee, who worked as a character designer for Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. This game had a rather messy development, initially set to launch at 2022, but indefinitely delayed. Several people, from the fans or the team, completely lost hope. There was some backlash at the initial trailers, but nonetheless is here. And Pragmata tells the story of Hugh Williams, an engineer working for the Delphi Corporation. Delphi discovered a revolutionary material on the moon called the Luna Filament, which can act as a material for an universal 3D printer. It can print anything: metal, wood, food. And Delphi has its main base on the moon, called the Cradle. But things go sideways when the Cradle stops responding to Earth, and Hugh and his team are sent to it. And...
I think we all know where this is going, so let's just skip to the end.
Yep, everybody dies except him. He finds a robot girl whom he names Diana and enlists her help to unravel what happened to the Cradle and return home. Normally, I build up arguments to viewers before reaching a conclusion, but in Pragmata's case I will be straightforward from the get-go. This is the biggest salad of blatant inspirations I've seen in a game so far this year. Right out of the bat we have that space with the design of the armor, the gun, and how Hugh is both an engineer and walks in a hunched way like Isaac. We have the aesthetics that resemble Vanquish a lot, the enemy design that evokes Metal Gear Solid: Revengeance, and surprising since the director worked there as a designer. And while this game uses the same engine as Resident Evil, the presentation of the scenario, camera work, and motions are quite similar to the zombies shooting Fiesta. I don't just mean the over-the-shoulder camera, the pans and focus on the puzzles, if a room changes and so on, is also nearly identical. Outside of these influences, Pragmata has a really good photography and camera. While some areas are sadly a bit too dark, this isn't the norm, with scenarios visible and bright. The main colors are white and blue, which are echoed by the protagonist's color schemes and offering a good contrast with the grey and black from the lunar scape. This game only has 7 stages, and some are creative, like having a forest or New York in a space station, but with everything messed up like a botched 3D printer project. The camera knows how to flaunt the scenarios with wide pans at the right moments, and the lighting is well adjusted to guide the viewer's attention. The designs of Hugh's armor sets are interesting. The main suits reminds me a lot of Isaac, yes, but it's enough of its own to create an identity, although his other suits are blatant references to other franchises. I do enjoy that his suit is basically a power armor with clothes over, making it more obvious that he is meant to be an engineer, not a soldier. But he isn't a grubby and shabby grunt either. Diana's design is also simple but striking. The little blonde girl of gold locks that seemingly jumped out of a fairy tale book mixed with the big, bulky and blue suit offers a nice contrast and makes her impossible to miss. There is nowhere to escape because the enemy design also reminds me a lot of the Metal Gear Solid dwarf geckos. And it's interesting that it's at the same time something that mimics the human but goes into body horror without using flesh. It's interesting but nothing overly new or striking to the medium. Just the usual humanoid robots, some pseudo-military designs, some designs evoking something cooler, and the horror for the bosses. They also remind me a lot of Binary Domain. Cinematics are short and well shot. Again, nothing flabbergasting, but it gets the job done. One detail that I really like it is that while they try to emulate North American style of cinematics, the Japanese core is still there and strong. Hugh doesn't move like a guy in a heavy suit. He moves like a tokusatsu protagonist, akin to Kamen Rider or Jaspion, with heavily expressive and exaggerated body movements. And now let's tackle the meat, the gameplay. This is still a salad. Basically, Pragmata is set as if it was a horror game, with small, creepy corridors and a story about surviving killer robots. But at the same time, with bigger-than-life bosses and ludicrous weaponry in arcade packaging. Lots of colorful things such as different weapons and Lumin, which serves as upgrade currency, and a checkpoint system made of shelter, thus reinforcing the survival aspect. It's weird, like the game is trying to tell you at the same time that it's a pizza and a hamburger, and not exactly bad at either, but one step at a time. Everything spins around the hacking mechanic, where normal enemies are nearly impervious to damage, so you need Diana to hack into them and open their vulnerabilities, so you can dish real damage to them. The hacking mechanic takes shape in a minigame from a holographic screen that pops up. It's almost like Snake. If you're using a controller, you have to use the main buttons to guide the line to the goal. If you are using a keyboard, you have to hold out and guide the line with your mouse. It takes a bit to get used to it, but it's doable. In your path, there are the usual problematic squares that will block or downright stop Diana's hacking, and special squares that will grant you bonuses and extra effects if you go over them and complete the hacking. And I have to say, the studio calibrated everything around this mechanic really well. Everything in combat takes in consideration the fact that the player's attention won't be 100% on the enemies, so the hacking screen doesn't take the entire field of view. It pops back in and out and won't reset unless you are hit or you lock into someone else. Enemies are slow enough that you can pop down the hacking screen and dodge, but arenas are quite small, so you can't just keep running away. You have to fight back or else you'll end up being pinned down. Their attacks are highly telegraphed and their weak spots are easy to pinpoint, but the game doesn't stay still, sending new, faster versions of known enemies against the player, with the difficulty of the hacking minigame being ramped accordingly with new hurdles, while at the same time giving the player new tools and weapons, new hacking modules, new hacking modes, weapons that help those who aren't as good with the hacking minigame, weapons that help when you need more space, also completely removing the need to gather ammo. Your main gun refills bullets on the fly, and secondary weapons are discarded as soon as their ammo runs out, forcing you to be tactical but not letting you hang out to dry. Hacking isn't the only mechanic though, you also have the opportunity of overheating your enemies, letting them vulnerable to finishers, and with the loadout of mechanics of equipping you with perks, you can focus on different gameplay styles like doing chunks of damage through hacking or focusing on overheating enemies, like I did. I haven't seen a new mechanic being so well greased for gameplay in years! Within this mechanic, there is also the usual fare of upgrading your equipment, and the game keeps things balanced by using different kinds of currency. You can only grind Limb, which upgrades your guns and hacks up to a point. For more, you need special Limb units, and to upgrade your health, hack and main gun damage, you need cubes. Those are limited in number, found only through specific challenges or exploration, and even then your upgrades are limited to the level of the shelter, which can only be upgraded through defeating bosses. Regarding said collectibles, the game is also quite chill. You're free to backtrack at your own leisure in order to find them, and the game informs you of how many you got and which areas have to yet to clean up. Some are blocked by hazards that will only be cleaned up with future upgrades, so don't worry much about getting everything at once. The only thing that I dislike is that there are little statues that also remind me of Vanquish that won't show up on the status screen, and the only way you can find them is through a tiny audio cue. The shelter acts as a Dark Souls bonfire. No, this game isn't a Soulsborne. You don't lose all your money when you die. Anyway, the shelter acts as a Dark Souls bonfire. It's both the checkpoint, where you recover your health, improve your stats and changes your loadouts, but if you use it, all the enemies in the area respawn. Since the maps are quite straightforward, it's not much of a problem. Their simplicity also fits well how Hugh is a lumbering beast slow as molasses. He can use his side jets to hover and dash, but they will be quite inefficient through half of the game. But again, since everything is straightforward and slow, and since there aren't many platform challenges, this won't be an issue until you try the special training challenges. The majority of these challenges are easy and offer hefty bonuses, so do complete them as fast as you can. If there are two things that I didn't like about this gameplay were the healing, where you need to keep a button pressed for you to do a slow animation in order to heal up a chunk of his health, and can be easily interrupted, and it has limited charges that you can only refill if you go to a shelter. No, this is not a Soulsborne game. Anyway, the healing is far too slow, and the fact that this game is insanely short. It has 7 main areas and can be finished in less than 10 hours if you are going straight for the end, or 20 if you want to search every nook and cranny and get the special ending. Also, Diana's special powers is also slow. The stages themselves are rather simple and repetitive. Nearly all of them block progression through variations of go find these keys a la old bomber shooters and are rather straightforward. But this is a problem for the writing. And I'm already immune to hype, and being a guy without kids, I'm immune to the siren song of dead games. Yes, I hated both God of War and Last of Us, why do you ask? Anyway, and I will be honest from the get-go, I didn't expect much here since Capcom doesn't invest a lot in writing. Their last game with a really good story was... well, Breath of Fire 4 in... Jesus mode. But Pragmata's story is basically a bunch of excuse strings between the gameplay and "Look, this girl is so adorable!" Anything that is related to Diana is 100% made to appeal to dads. She doesn't cry, she doesn't yell, she's helpful, she makes lovely drawings of her and Hugh together, and most of all, she isn't annoying, which considering the quality of writing and acting nowadays, this is a feat by itself. Although the sheer amount of repetition whenever she does a scan or finds an item or states the obvious can be a bit grating. Hugh, on the other hand, isn't shallow but isn't much complex either. If Diana is meant to be the perfect surrogate daughter, he is meant to be the perfect tragic but relatable surrogate dad. Being an orphan, loving his parents, having traveled the whole world, and doing what he loves. Honestly, it's a miracle that we had a kid that isn't whining, and I'm not surprised that we have a follow-up with a guy whose parents are still alive and are good people. Their banter does prevent things from getting overly stale, and even a jaded closet asshole like me can find her adorable. The problem is everything else. Dialogue is extremely expositive, meaning that instead of feeling like a normal dialogue between two people, we have the classic "I'm totally not going to die! Look at the photo of my wife!" or "I'm an orphan, and thus I know how adopting people is super awesome." It's not bad, it's well done. I mean, could be worse, could be Death Stranding.
Yeah. Like Mario and Princess Peach.
Ugh. But it is still utilitarian dialogue. I can't go into details without getting into spoilers, but the plot is a PG blend between Resident Evil and Dead Space. No, I'm not joking. Hugh gets into the station, his colleagues die, he has to stop the evil machines from killing everyone else. That's it. And this is where the lack of a good story also infects the gameplay. In most games, there is a reason why the main character goes from point A to B, even if flimsy, in order to build a narrative and characters. Here, most, if not all the problems that Hugh faces in his quest are just filler. Go to X, undo the barrier, go to Y, make a bridge, which is a barrier. Diana got a power up? Go back, redo these stages, redo these sections, do the training missions for more resources. There are barely any other characters to interact with, no grand questions to think about. Hugh starts the game with some visible, comprehensible trauma from robots after they kill all his team, but this doesn't go anywhere. He immediately enters dad mode for Diana after he gives her a name, and that's it. Could have done something better, something interesting with the concept, like his logical brain being skeptical of a robot while her appearance and behavior making her endearing and appealing to his dad instincts. Something akin to that AI movie from Spielberg. And again, I'm okay with games being simple. I love the Monster Hunter world, and the story there is also a giant excuse to whack giant monsters in the head with weapons made from other monsters, but that was made with some modicum of care to show a cohesive narrative and a whole society. Vanquish is absurdly simple as well, but it knows it's an arcade game. It doesn't throw higher concepts besides what's needed for their narrative to work. It just rolls with the action and insanity. And Pragmata doesn't even have that. It's the bare bones of a bare bones of simplicity. It raises interesting questions and don't work with them, as if pretending to be bigger. If you're a dad projecting your instincts into this game, or if you wanted to be a dad, good for you. But as a critic, I have to say that this game is a gigantic waste of good opportunities to flesh out interesting concepts and ideas. Just one of the examples. How would the ability to print anything impact the Earth? It's not even touched. In the end, either you get hooked by the Dead Simulator or the story ends up being immensely boring and predictable. On the good side, the soundtrack ain't shabby. Capcom does like some nice tunes, and while there aren't any bangers worth of note, I did enjoy the combat music. It also reminded me of Vanquish, yeah.
Leave it to me!
It's also well paced with gentler tunes or silence whenever there is exploration going on, and when the first shot's fired till the last enemy drops, it's a more high-paced, higher-tech music. The voice acting is also good. Not top-notch, but good. Hugh's voice actor is quite good at expressing emotion during the little exposition bouts. You can sense his happiness or his longing when he's talking about his parents. But he doesn't have the bang when Hugh is going heroic mode. He sounds unsure whenever Hugh goes for a finisher and yells, "Take this!" The voice actors for Diana did the miracle of sounding childish, but not grating or annoying, so I give her a round of applause.
You have to be more careful. If something happened to you, I'd be in real trouble.
In real trouble? Why?
I mean, well, you'd best think on that yourself.
The voice actor for Eidos, the rogue AI, has a really good voice that can sound just the right pitch perfect of polite and irritating.
Hello, this is Edith.
In the end, yeah, this is Dead Space meets Resident Evil meets Dead Trip Simulator with Vanquish sauce all over it. Honestly, it's a miracle that this project was approved in the first place, and the gameplay is absurdly solid for a first time. Sadly, while the gameplay is really good and well greased with the mechanics of hacking well established, the story is lackluster, predictable and boring, and the game is insanely short, so I can only recommend players interested in the hacking shootouts to wait for a sale. And I'm not gonna lie, there is nothing wrong with what we got, but I thought that it would be far more interesting if it was the other way around, with Diana being the human and Hugh the robot. Yes, like Bioshock. So, for spoilers... Okay, so the beef happens because the doctor who invented the Pragmata wanted to heal his daughter from a mysterious sickness. For that, he invented the robots based on her. So, with the replicating technology, he invents the Pragmata to test possible cures and transplant organs. The company reveals itself to be evil, surprise! And sabotages his efforts. I don't know why, because they are evil. His girl dies as a result, he gets mad with grief, he dies from grief, his robot gets mad with grief, she unleashes the zombie virus in the station, the filament in the station, and plans to unleash it on Earth next. Hugh, comes with his crew, finds Diana, 2/3 of the game are spent faffing around trying to find Eidos, the resident AI, to stop his madness, they find 8, and pretty much like Wesker, the little blonde reveals herself to be evil. 8, not Diana. But the twist is that she impales Hugh instead of being impaled herself. Hugh and Diana defeat her, Hugh has a really sad moment where he dies while sending Diana away, or doesn't die in the golden ending, all in order to crank the tears from dads all over. See, total Resident Evil plot with Dead Space. As soon as 8 showed up, I pointed out traitor because 8 isn't in the promotion pictures, and the writers think that a plot twist could help things be more interesting. It doesn't, because who else would betray the group? The shelter robot? Well, that's all for today, thank you very much and see you all next time. Remember to like and subscribe.